Good morning, welcome to Random Bible Thoughts with Russ. My next study here that I'm going to do a video on is called A Pharisee's Attitude. Do you have a Pharisaical attitude? This study is basically, how do I want to say it, directed more towards Christians that may have a legalistic view on things. I'm going to go through the 7 woes of the Pharisees in Matthew 23. And I'm going to do this in probably 2 to 3 videos. I'm going to make them shorter than normal just to see if that helps in viewership, just because it won't be so long, and see if that makes it better. So we'll just get right into it. The Pharisees' attitude. I wrote this in June of this year, on the 20th. Took longer than just one day, but anyways. Question: do you have a Pharisaical attitude? Pharisaical, practicing or advocating strict observance of extreme forms or ceremonies of religion or conduct without regard to the spirit, self-righteous, hypocritical. Matthew 23:1. Then Jesus said to the crowds and his disciples, the scribes and Pharisees sit on the seat of Moses. So practice and observe what they tell you, but not what they do. Practice what they tell you, but not what they do. For they preach, but do not practice. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the people's shoulders. But they themselves are not willing to move them with their finger. They do all their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fingers long, and they love the place of honor at feasts and the best seats in the synagogues. In case you don't know what a phylactery is, it refers to a small box containing the scriptures that the Jews wore on their foreheads or arms. The scribes and Pharisees apparently enlarged these boxes to make them more visible. And you can see Exodus 13:9 and Deuteronomy 6:8 and 11:18 as far as what a phylactery is. Several times in Matthew chapter 23 it says, "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites," from verses 13 through 29. And let's take a look at these woes. The first woe, in digging deeper, Matthew 23:13. "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut the kingdom of heaven in the people's faces. For you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter to go in." And there's a footnote here, and some manuscripts add here, or after verse 12, verse 14, which says, "Woe to you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for a pretense you make a long prayer. Therefore you will receive the greater condemnation." I'm not going to go into that woe. I did not search that woe, just because it's not necessarily in all manuscripts. I just chose to move on from it. To get the understanding of this woe and the following woes, we need to look at verses 3 through 7. This woe and the following woes are an interjection of grief in other words, if I may say, their grief is to come for these scribes and Pharisees. Why do I say that? Because they preach but do not practice. They are hypocrites, a pretender, an actor. They do not do what they say. Have you ever heard the statement, "Do as I do and not as I do"? Do as I say, and not as I do. There can be consequences for such a statement, and that's a woe. They shut the kingdom of heaven to the people and don't enter themselves. Being a hypocrite, I think, is why the scribes and Pharisees won't enter, but why don't they allow the people to enter? And this is just a thought here. That's all. This is just my thought on this. Maybe it's because of the burdens and false teachings laid on them by verse 4. Yet they do not do any of the things they have the people to do. Sounds kind of like Congress of the United States. Do you have this kind of attitude? You say if you're a Christian, then you must do this or do that, yet you yourselves don't do what you tell others to do. Are you placing unrealistic burdens on others? What did Jesus say in Matthew 11:28? Come to me, that's Jesus the Christ, all you who are wearied and heavy burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Fortunately, it is not you or me people are to follow. It's Christ. What's Christ tell us? His yoke is easy and his burden is light. The next woe, in digging deeper. Woe to you, teachers of the law and Pharisees, you hypocrites! You travel over land and sea to win a single convert, and when you succeed, you make them as you are twice as much a child of hell. Why are they twice as much a child of hell? Because of the teachers of the law and the Pharisees. Legalistic teaching of the law. This kind of teaching is destructive. There are groups out there that teach in this kind of way, very legalistic. You can't dance, or of any kind. You don't play cards. You don't go out to eat on Sunday because you cost someone to work. You don't do this. You don't do that. Rules, rules, rules. I grew up in such an organization. Is there a problem with rules? No, as long as the rules help you develop a relationship with Christ, and not rules based on works-based faith. Following rules won't get you into heaven. Following Christ will. As a Christian, do we continue to sin? No. And before you comment on this, let's continue listening, or as I have on here, continue reading, because this will be eventually in a book. Romans 6:1. What shall we say then? Shall we go on sinning so that the grace may increase? By no means. We are those who have died to sin, have come to live in it any longer. How can we who have died to sin live in it any longer? Here's a legalistic example for Christians. You're just one sin away from hell. This was told to me once. So in other words, if you have any failures in your walk with Christ, you let out a curse word slip, you could be in danger of going to hell. Really? There isn't any grace or mercy in such a statement. What does Romans 6:1 say? Look at the verbiage. Go on sinning. If you continue to sin, has anything even changed? If you continue to sin, has anything ever changed? When we come to repentance, then we turn away from the old way of thinking, turn away from the old way of behavior. Now I'll explain on this a little bit. I'll expand on this in a little bit. Have died to sin. When we come to Christ, our old self, our old nature is crucified to sin. Does not have any stronghold on you. We are no longer a slave to sin. See Romans 6:6. Living any longer. This is speaking about a lifestyle of sin. Coming to Christ, we can no longer live a lifestyle of sin. As it states in Romans 6:1, it mentions grace. If we have a moment of failure, sin in our walk, there is God's grace. Be warned, if you are intentionally, willfully sinning because of God's grace, He may just let you go on that road of destruction. And if it be possible, you could be putting your salvation into jeopardy. Do you have this Pharisee type attitude? That you place such burdens on believers that they are bound to fail and maybe even turn away from God. So there's two woes there. One is being legalistic, and the other one is not doing what you preach. Do you have that kind of attitude as a Christian leader, as a Christian mentor, as a Christian brother or sister? Do you place unnecessary burdens on others, saying you need to be doing this to be a good Christian, or you need to be doing that to be a good Christian? There are behaviors that a Christian is expected to have. And there are things that a Christian is expected to do. Do you teach one thing and do another? Pharisaical attitudes. The next video will be woe 3 and 4, and maybe 5, depending on how much context I have in there. I hope you hear this video, enjoy this video. Give me a like, give me a thumbs up, give me comments, and I really appreciate it. And I've had a few comments on Top Buzz that were just ridiculous in a sense. They make a comment, don't give any evidence for their statement. If you disagree with me, give me some evidence. Give me some scriptural context. I'll be more than happy to change what I think if I got proof that I am wrong. May you have a wonderful day. It is 8/6/2018, and it's 4:40 in the morning. God bless.